Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the patch notes for Season 4 Reloaded. I'm going to go through only the weapon changes just because that's mostly what my channel focuses on. So we'll go through all the weapon changes, I'll give opinions on everything. I will give you what I think might be the new meta. And obviously those are just going to be opinions because I haven't played with the stuff yet, so I don't know for sure. But I think I'll have a pretty good idea of what's going to be the best just by reading through the patch notes. So I'll give you guys that information. I also talk about recoil changes, so I'll show you some recoil comparisons and see how that's going to affect these different weapons. As always, if you guys like the content, consider dropping us a sub. We're trying to get 200,000 subs in the next month or two. We'll see. I'd like to get it by the 1-year channel anniversary, which is about a month from now, so that would be amazing. But yeah, we'll jump into it here, and I'll talk about all the weapon changes. So Raven's been talking about this for a while. They've said they want to increase the overall TTKs in Warzone, and I think that's a great thing to do. It's very, very frustrating when you're right next to cover and you get beamed so fast from 50 meters away that you literally can't get to cover before getting down. That just doesn't seem right to me. So I think I completely agree with increasing TTKs some across the board. I was really hoping they were just going to increase base health by 50 or something like that rather than completely reworking all the weapons, but they decided to go the completely reworking all weapons route. So that's what we are going to go through today. That's what this whole block of text is talking about, just that they want to increase TTKs and their logic behind doing all of that. So the Cold War AK is the first one on the list. They decreased the headshot damage and decreased the upper torso damage. This is something they did across the board pretty much, is lowered that upper torso multiplier. I think that's an interesting choice. They say it increases the need for precision, which I feel like it kind of does the opposite, because if you don't have an upper torso multiplier on most of the guns now, then you can just hit the person anywhere. This is like giving most of the guns that 5.56 damage profile that like the M4, Ram 7, Grau, Kilo had, where they do the same damage to the chest, stomach, and limbs. So I feel like this is kind of doing the opposite of what they said. I don't have a problem with it really. I'm fine with most of the guns having the same damage profile across the board, but I don't really agree with what they said it's doing to the game. I feel like this makes it, you don't need as much precision now because you don't have to hit upper torso with these guns. So that's just my thoughts on that. But the Modern Warfare AK as well got that upper chest multiplier nerf. So going from 1.2 to 1.1, people are upset with this because the Modern Warfare AK didn't really need a nerf, but what they're trying to do is across the board increase those TTKs. So even guns that maybe didn't need a nerf are going to get a nerf probably just because they want to increase TTKs everywhere, not just the guns that were good. So it'll probably take some tweaking. It'll take some time, and they'll be changing this stuff up a lot, I'm sure. But overall, even guns that didn't really need a nerf are going to get a nerf just because they want the TTKs to increase. So C58, this is obviously one of the best guns. I think it was the best gun with the 4x optic. So C58 with the 4x optic has like no recoil, and it hits like a truck, and you have a huge damage per mag, and you can use the 45 round mag because it shoots so slow and hits so hard. So it has good ADS times as well. So C58 needed a nerf for sure. We will talk about this recoil increase, but they reduced the headshot multiplier, so I'm assuming that's one less damage or one less shot to kill on headshots, going from 1.62 to 1.58. We'll see when we get the actual numbers. Upper torso, 1.2 to 1. Again, same thing as the Cold War AK. Lower torso, 1.1 to 1. So they reduced that multiplier again on the lower torso. This is a unique gun where it had different upper and lower torso multipliers. Not very many guns had that when compared to extremities. So that was always interesting. The AMAX, they increased the headshot multiplier from 1.5 to 1.55. And then they removed the upper torso chest shot multiplier. Again, same thing as before. Assault Rifle Bravo. I don't know what this gun is, so I'm not going to talk about it. FARA 83. The FARA had no recoil before, basically. They increased the recoil a little bit in the last patch, but it still had no visual recoil, still ridiculously easy to control. And now they've increased the recoil again, and we'll talk about that again. I've gone and compared this, and something interesting with that, actually. The maximum damage was decreased from 31 to 29, so I guess this is probably the first damage range. They've increased those TTKs in the first damage range, which really wasn't a problem. The problem was that it had no recoil out of range, and the TTKs were pretty good. So we'll see how this works out. FFAR 1. FFAR was interesting where it had a damage drop off down to 27 damage, but that didn't change the TTKs. So the TTKs were the same in the first damage range and the second damage range. So this will be a good change, I think. Increase the long range damage, the long range TTKs by a little bit. Headshot multiplier was decreased. Nobody was really using the FFAR. So again, this is one of those things where some people will be like, well, why are they nerfing it if nobody was really using it? And that's just because they're trying to increase the TTKs across the board. Damage range decreased by 20%. This is fine. I mean, it had a really long damage range before. Neck multiplier increased. So this basically gives you kind of a chest multiplier on the neck, which I find interesting. We still need to do research into the neck multipliers. It must be a very, very small hitbox, or we would have caught it before this. So I'm not too concerned about this. This won't make that much of a difference, I don't think. Assault rifle golf, again, I don't know what that is. I'll come back and cover these ones at the end that I didn't know what they were. Grau 556, so minimum damage increased from 22 to 24. This is a nice little buff for the Grau. And with all the other nerfs that are happening, the Cold War guns, I think the Grau is going to be potentially mixed back in the meta. We'll see. That's one that I'm not positive about. I'll have to look to see what this does with the TTKs. Obviously, it's going to reduce the TTKs, which is interesting when they're trying to increase TTKs. But the Grau wasn't great before, so this should be a nice change. Groza, maximum damage decreased. Again, Groza's getting hit with a nerf when it already wasn't being used by anyone, pretty much. Maximum damage range increased a little bit. Headshot multiplier decreased from 1.62 to 1.5. Upper torso multiplier decreased. So it still has an upper torso multiplier, but it's been lowered. And then lower torso multiplier has been removed entirely. So this is more like an AMAX in terms of how the chest damage works now. Recoil pattern smooth. I think the Groza's actually, after these changes, with everything else being taken into account, might be okay. We'll have to look at the recoil. I don't have something to compare to the recoil, so I can't really show you a before and after for the Groza. For the other guns, I can actually. Or for the Groza, I can't. But we can see how this feels and kind of compare it to the other long range guns and see what it feels like. Krig. Only change to the Krig was that the minimum damage was increased from 25 to 26. That's a very small change. I don't think that changes the TTK, just increases the DPS a little bit. So Krig, I think, is going to be a meta weapon, and you'll see why when we talk about recoil. Has basically no recoil and has decent TTKs. It's always had decent TTKs and no recoil, but before we had the FARA, and we had the C58, which just had better TTKs with no recoil as well. So I think after these recoil changes that I show you here at the end, you'll see that the Krig's probably going to be a meta weapon. M13 minimum damage increased from 19 to 20. Again, small change, but nice that they're actually buffing the Modern Warfare guns some. That is good. Assault Rifle Charlie, I don't know what this is. It's probably, I don't know, it's probably like the M4, or the M4 looking at that. I don't know. I will come back to this. Oden, upper torso multiplier decreased from 1.3 to 1.2. Still has a strong upper torso multiplier, so it could still be good if you hit chest shots. But again, all of this, I'm going to have to get the numbers on. Right after this video, I'm going to go do a community test where we test literally all these changes with the community and get all the new damage profiles and hopefully have the website updated in the next day or two for all these changes. So if you're interested in helping out with that, be sure you're in my Discord directly after this video goes live. I'm going to start organizing that and getting everything set up. So there'll be information about that in our Discord, which will be linked below. If you want to help out, there's not that many things to test, maybe like, I don't know, 20 guns or so. So we only need like 20 people. So it might be full by the time you get there. But if you want to help out, definitely check out the Discord. But on to the QBZ, minimum damage increased. So the QBZ had very little recoil before, but it also had horrible TTKs. But it had insane movement speed, so the base movement speed was reduced. ADS movement speed was reduced. Upper torso multiplier increased from 1.1 to 1.2. Lower torso multiplier increased from 1 to 1.1. So I think they're kind of trying to make the QBZ, instead of being a super speedy like SMG like AR, reducing these movement speeds and increasing the damage. I think they're trying to make it more like a you know, long range AR, and it already had very little recoil, and they say there's no recoil changes. So I think the QBZ could potentially be a pretty solid weapon now for long range. Again, this is one that I'm not sure about because I was so far removed from the QBZ before. It was just not good before, that I don't know exactly what this is going to do to TTKs and how it's going to affect the gun. But just looking at this, I think it might be decent now. So we'll have to see what the numbers say once we have all the numbers. But for now, that's kind of my thoughts on that. RAM 7, maximum damage decreased from 28 to 26. This was something that not very many people use the RAM here in the United States, but I'm friends with some content creators from Brazil, and the RAM 7 was used by everyone there. It was like 100% the meta in Brazil, which I found really, really interesting. Even when the FARA and the C58 were out, the RAM 7 was a big problem for them. So I think it was probably really good here too. It's just people didn't give it the chance that it deserved, and content creators here weren't using it. So I think this nerf is probably a good change. It might seem like it wasn't necessary, but just judging by the fact that it was a completely meta weapon in other parts of the world, I think it probably could use that nerf. So XM4, maximum damage decreased from 32 to 30. Minimum damage decreased from 28 to 27. ADS speed decreased slightly, which means ADS time was increased slightly, which is... it seems like this got hit a little bit hard to me compared to the other changes. Recoil increased slightly. Again, that's one that I will be comparing for you guys. This is going to increase TTKs and hurt the ADS time, and the recoil change is pretty significant as well. So we'll look at the recoil here in a second. But LMGs, the M60 from Cold War, headshot multiplier decreased, or headshot damage increased from 36 to 37. Headshot multiplier increased from 1.5 to 1.6. Oh, so this was maximum. Sorry, maximum damage increased from 36 to 37. This change is not going to be enough to make the M60 meta. Not a chance. MG34. Why would you nerf the MG34? It was already really, really bad. Like, not worth using. It had great TTKs, but there were so many things that held it back. Movement speed, reload time, mag size. I don't feel like it needed a nerf, but they're just trying to increase TTKs. So apparently they felt like they needed to increase these TTKs. So they did that there. MG82, ADS speed decreased slightly, means ADS time was increased. MG82 might be decent now. It has so much recoil after the recoil nerf. I'm not sure where it's going to fit in this. This is one that I'm going to have to wait and see. LMG Alpha. Again, I don't know what this is. We'll come back to that. SA87, upper torso multiplier decreased from 1.2 to 1.1. SA87 with all these other nerfs might be decent now too, actually. Reducing that chest TTK is not going to make that much difference. It had a really good TTKs across the board beforehand. It was just kind of hard to use. So this might actually be okay now. LMG Alpha, again, I don't know what that is, so can't talk about that. I'll come back at the end. Swiss K31. So Swiss is basically my favorite aggressive sniper right now. It was amazing. Once you get used to the reticle, it was nasty for both Rebirth and Verdansk. So they've updated the ADS animation. I have seen that. It doesn't really look a whole lot different to me. And now it has a good reticle. It has the same reticle as the ZRG, which is awesome. So I think the Swiss now pretty much takes the cake over the Kar98, just because the reticle was like one of the only things that was holding it back beforehand. So Swiss is awesome. Continues to be awesome. It has better damage than the Kar98, similar ADS times, has a good reticle now, has a much faster reload time. It's just it's a great gun. It has better aiming stability. But on to submachine guns. AK-74U, maximum damage decreased from 35 to 31. That's a huge nerf. Minimum damage increased from 25 to 26, so it's going to be a little bit better at range, but a lot worse up close. Headshot multiplier decreased. Upper torso multiplier increased. Bullet velocity increased by 5%. So they're kind of trying to extend the range out of the AK-74U a little bit, I think. It's kind of going to be like a hybrid SMG AR is what they're looking like they're trying to do here. Submachine gun Alpha, I don't know what that is. Come back to it. Bullfrog. Maximum damage decreased from 32 to 31. Multiplier headshot multiplier decreased from 1.62 to 1.5. Yeah, so these, again, I knew these existed. I knew these upper arm and lower arm. I knew there were other hitboxes. It was just I haven't had time to test all of them. There are a few guns that have this. Not all of them have this. So the Bullfrog has better arm damage now for upper arms and upper legs. This is why we got some weird values when testing. Overall, how do these changes affect the Bullfrog? Not a huge difference. I mean, I think that it'll still be a good SMG. We'll have to see what the other SMG changes are. KSP 45, headshot multiplier decreased. KSP wasn't in a great spot before, so they just kind of left it alone. Might be decent now, depending on what they did to the other SMGs. LC10 maximum damage decreased from 30 to 27. It seems like the SMGs are getting a bigger hit than the ARs did, so they're trying to increase those TTKs up close pretty aggressively, it seems like. Headshot multiplier was decreased as well. Mac 10 maximum damage decreased from 24 to 23. Minimum damage decreased from 20 to 19, so they're hitting the Mac 10 again. Mac 10 didn't look great on paper in terms of TTKs, but it was always a great weapon for mobility reasons and fire rate reasons. So lots of flinch, very easy recoil, great mobility. It was a great SMG, so they're just reducing the damage a little bit. But I think it's still going to be a very good SMG compared to these other ones, so we'll see. Milano, recoil increased, maximum damage range decreased, headshot multiplier decreased, upper torso multiplier decreased, lower torso multiplier decreased. So Milano was disgusting before. I've talked about this a ton. I loved it in the state it was just before this patch. Had basically no recoil. If you kitted it for range, it had decent bullet velocity. Not great. It didn't have AR bullet velocity. It only had one damage drop off. Had pretty good TTKs everywhere. Had fantastic sprint to fire everywhere. I was on track to beat my PR with a Milano Cold War MP5 the other day. I had 27 kills with like 5 or 6 left. And I screwed it up. We don't have to talk about that. But using a long range Milano with a Cold War MP5 you wouldn't think would be great. But because of the sprint to fire time and the decent TTKs everywhere and no recoil, it was just awesome for that role too. So it was a great gun. We'll see how these changes affect it. It depends on how much they increase the recoil. The headshot multiplier is kind of sad to me because I liked being rewarded for hitting headshots. I felt like I could win fights that I normally wouldn't win when I'd hit some headshots with the Milano. So not sure about that. But I think it'll still be a good gun. It definitely needed a nerf. It was too good. Some people didn't like it, but I think they just didn't give it enough time to get used to it. But it was a great gun. Submachine gun alpha, don't know what that is. From Black Ops Cold War. Nail gun, maximum damage decreased from 50 to 46. Headshot multiplier decreased from 1.62 to 1.45, and upper torso multiplier decreased from 1.28 to 1. So this is a big nerf for the nail gun. I think with this change, it probably won't have too much of a place anymore. Before, it was kind of like a shotgun, where it had insane TTKs up close, but it wasn't super easy, and it had a small mag, so I don't know. After these changes, it might not be worth using anymore. The machine gun echo, come back to that. PPSh, maximum damage decreased from 28 to 26. So PPSh got hit with a TTK nerf up close, but so did almost everything else. So I don't know where this is going to sit now. We'll have to look at the actual TTK charts later on. The ISO minimum damage increased from 20 to 21. The ISO, we'll see. Might be okay now. Might be okay. Might be similar to where the Milano felt before, because everything else is getting a nerf. It's going to have SMG sprint to fire. The problem is that it's Modern Warfare, so unless they touch the Modern Warfare mobility stuff, it might be really slow if you try to use it as an all-rounder. But we'll see. Obviously, all this is going to take more investigation. Submachine gun delta, come back to that. Fennec was decreased in damage from 25 to 24. That's going to increase shots to kill by 1. Minimum damage decreased from 20 to 19. Just a 1 damage nerf on both damage ranges. Fennec had really, really fast TTKs, so I understand why they did this. People didn't really use it because not very many people play solos and duos. But in solos and duos, the Fennec was actually really good. Had great TTKs. So they're just trying to increase those TTKs a little bit. Tactical rifle Charlie. I believe that's the Cold War AUG. Headshot multiplier decreased from 1.8 to 1.7. Carve. So for the 3 tactical rifles, they just reduced the headshot damage, which Nobody was using these guns anyway after the bullet velocity nerfs. I hate that they balance these guns by having bad bullet velocity. I think they'll come back and change that later on, because literally no one's using these guns right now. So if they increase that bullet velocity again for the M16, it'll still be decent. But we'll see. All right, so I've gone back through and looked up all these guns to see what they were. So Assault Rifle Bravo is the FAL. They decreased the headshot damage dramatically on the FAL, which is good because it had insane headshot TTKs before, which was really only useful for cheaters. This is such a cheater gun, which is obviously a huge problem in Warzone right now. There's so many cheaters. So that's a good change. Upper torso decreased from 1.2 to 1.1. Not a huge change there. Assault Rifle Golf. This is the Scar H. Upper torso multiplier decreased from 1.2 to 1.1. They just increased this, so it's interesting that they decreased it there. I still don't think it's going to fit in the meta, really. Next up, Assault Rifle Charlie. I was correct. This was the M4. So a little bit worse TTKs up close, but better TTKs at range. So I actually think the M4 could sneak into the meta here. The Modern Warfare M4. It's going to be a pretty good gun now with that increase to TTKs, or decrease to TTKs at range. Next up, LMG Alpha. This is the PKM. Maximum damage increased, maximum damage range decreased, and upper torso multiplier decreased. So PKM had good TTKs before. Now it's going to have a little bit worse TTKs at range. Probably. We'll have to see. Sometimes when they say maximum damage increased up close, that means something else for damage range. So we'll see. They had great TTKs before, so I think it'll still be decent. It's just so slow, and the reload time is so bad that nobody was really using it before. LMG Alpha for Black Ops Cold War. This is the Stoner, so maximum damage was decreased for the Stoner, and upper torso multiplier was removed. So I didn't really like the Stoner before. I thought there were better options. It might be a decent choice now that all the recoil's been nerfed for the ARs, which again we're going to talk about. But we'll see. A lot of people loved the gun. I just never got behind it. Submachine Gun Alpha. This is the AUG, Modern Warfare AUG. Minimum damage increased from 25 to 26, so it's going to be a little bit better at range. And headshot multiplier was decreased. So I'll have to see if this applies to both the 5.56 conversion and the 9mm or not. This is again something we'll be testing in our community test today. Bullfrog, already went over that. Next up, Submachine Gun Alpha from Black Ops Cold War. This is the Cold War MP5. Maximum damage decreased from 33 to 31. Minimum damage decreased from 25 to 24. I mean, they're trying to change the TTKs across the board, but the way this was balanced before, the Cold War MP5 had the best TTKs, but it was really hard to control, had really tough recoil compared to the Modern Warfare MP5, and now, unless I'm missing something, they didn't change the Modern Warfare MP5, so it's going to have better recoil and probably better TTKs now. So I think Modern Warfare MP5, I'll talk about the meta at the end, but I think Modern Warfare MP5 might come back into the meta. Submachine Gun Echo. This is the Bizon. Damage was reduced slightly. Minimum damage was increased slightly, so it'll be a little bit better at range, but a little bit worse up close. Not a huge change there. Bizon might actually be decent now with the nerfs to everything else. This is something, again, we're going to look at the TTK charts to find out. I don't know how these are going to change the TTKs exactly compared to all the other changes. Submachine Gun Delta. This is the Uzi, Modern Warfare Uzi. Minimum damage was increased from 25 to 26. Minor change. I don't know, again, if this is going to affect the ammo conversion or not. The .41 AE rounds were actually decent before for an all-rounder, so we'll see how this changes everything. Again, we'll be testing that in the community test right after this video. All right, let's go over the recoil changes real fast. So this is pre-patch on the left and then post-patch on the right. Same attachments. These are all meta, or not meta, but agency suppressor, the last barrel, field agent foregrip, axial 3x, and then for all these recoil plots, I shot 30 bullets. So you can see the XM4 first compared to the XM4 over here, dramatic increase. I did the math, it was 43% increase. That's a very significant increase to recoil. I think that's going to make it not super good anymore, especially with the TTK changes. I think the Modern Warfare M4 is going to be much better at range now than the XM4. FARA, they actually completely changed the recoil pattern. Before it went up to the right and then up to the left a little bit. Now it goes basically straight up and then up to the right. I don't know why they did this, but just a recoil change. And you can also see the magnitude increase dramatically. So 32% increase in recoil. I mean, the FARA felt like it had no recoil still before, even after the last nerf, so it probably will feel okay still. But again, I think there's going to be some better options. I think the Krig, the Modern Warfare M4 are going to be very good. And then the Cold War AK, again, these numbers aren't perfect. This is probably plus or minus, 5 or 10% on the actual recoil numbers, and that's because of aiming stability and just the semi-randomness of the recoil patterns. So they're never going to be perfect, but probably plus or minus 5 or 10% on these. Cold War AK didn't change, so it was not supposed to change. So 5%, I'm pretty sure it was just the normal variance. And then the Cold War, or not the Cold War, the C58, I saw a 17% increase. So this is a C58 pre-patch and then C58 post-patch over on the right. So 17% increase on something that already felt like it had no recoil is not going to be a big deal. Especially with the 4X optic. The 4X optic makes it really have no recoil. So this is with the 3X, but I used the 3X in my previous test, so I had to use that to compare. So a 17% increase is not dramatic. It should still be a very good gun. And then the Krig still has no recoil. Like I saw a minus 6% change in recoil again. That's probably just aiming sway. Maybe some randomness of the recoil pattern, but it didn't really change. So the Krig still has 0 recoil. I think the Krig is going to be the new easy go-to gun for people, like the FARA was, and I don't think it's going to feel a whole lot different than the FARA did. It's going to have decent TTKs and just going to be an absolute laser beam. So we'll see how that works out. I think the Krig's going to need some adjustments probably. But as far as... Alright, so my preliminary thoughts on the meta. I like that they're increasing TTKs. I think they're doing a good job with patch notes, with everything like that. But I actually think will be probably the best long-range ARs. So going through all these changes, trying to remember everything. Obviously, I'm going to have to play the game and see how these things feel. But I think Krig, number one, I think Krig's going to be meta for sure. Krig actually got a buff to its long-range damage when it had no recoil before. It already had decent TTKs. So the Krig is going to be, I'm 98% sure, meta. I think the C58 is still going to be really good. It's not going to be ridiculous like it was before, but it's still going to be really good. So I think C58 is still in the meta. The Modern Warfare M4 getting this buff to TTKs at range, I think probably will sneak it into the meta. We'll see with the Modern Warfare movement if it stays in the meta or not for long range. But I think it will. I think the Modern Warfare M4 is going to be really good. The Grau is going to be pretty good again too with this buff to long range damage. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But Krig for sure is the one I'm positive about. Krig is going to be really, really good. LMGs, SA87 might be okay since it's basically an AR. I don't really see the other LMGs coming into the meta just because of the same reasons as always. They're really slow. They have really bad reload times. The Stoner will be okay. Stoner will still be okay. I know a lot of people love the Stoner. If you liked the Stoner before, you're probably still going to really like the Stoner. It didn't really get hit that hard. And a lot of the ARs got nerfed. So the Stoner should be pretty good. It's going to be a very much sniper meta because the long-range ARs are nerfed. Unfortunately, the Krig, I think, is going to make it tough to snipe in a lot of situations, just like the FARA made it tough to snipe because it was so accurate. The Krig's going to be exactly the same way. The Swiss and the Kar98 are going to be super, super good guns to use in this meta still, especially before people find out that the Krig is so accurate. Sorry about that, by the way, but, got to make videos. As far as submachine guns go, I think the Modern Warfare MP5, at least they didn't list it here, didn't catch a nerf. I think Modern Warfare MP5 might sneak back into the meta. Modern Warfare MP7 might sneak back into the meta. Mac 10 got a very small change. I think this won't change the time to kills. I don't think this one might, but the first damage range it won't. Mac 10 is gonna be very good still. Let's see. PPSh will be decent still. Yeah, so I think Mac 10, Modern Warfare MP5, MP7 are all gonna be really, really good. for SMGs. I'll probably be using the MP5 and the MP7 to start with before I get a whole handle on how all these changes affect TTKs. So yeah, I think if you want a killer loadout right now, Krig 6 with MP5, Modern Warfare MP5, or Krig 6 with MP7 is going to be disgusting. But yeah, these are just my preliminary thoughts. We'll have to actually see how this stuff plays out when I play the game and when I get all these numbers tested. Again, right after this, we're going to go test everything. So we should have all this up in the next couple days. All right, that's everything I wanted to cover today. I just want to go through the patch notes. I will obviously timestamp all of this so you can jump to whatever guns you want to hear my thoughts on. But yeah, Krig 6 is going to be nasty. I think they kind of messed that one up a little bit. Actually making the TTKs better on the Krig when it already had no recoil. We'll see how it plays out, though. We'll have to actually play the game and see what it feels like. But I think the Krig's going to be disgusting. Sniper's going to be really good. Swiss, Kar 98. It's going to be a very fun sniper meta for a little bit until people start using the Krig, and then it might be a little bit frustrating. But yeah, as always, hope you guys enjoyed the content. Hope you have a great day. Again, if you want to help with the community test, we're going to do that right after this. So be sure to be in the Discord. But yeah, I'll see you guys all in the next video.